in the other class,
Thôi nó không
version 7 and
không thấy hết đúng không?
banana.
Nó không lấy né.
Version 10.
Không có né.
So there is the difference because the chapter about bond in the book version 10, it is chapter 7, but in book version 7, it is chapter 6. Okay? There's the difference. Now, the lecture today, before we go on about the main part about the stock valuation, I will go back a little bit about the rate of return in order to actually understand this completely. Does not mean that I don't want you to just understand the formula, write down the formula, have no idea what the rate of return is. Okay? And this will cover three parts. The first part, are you jumping enough from your job? Second, risk and return cash flow already know. And the third is the aspect of 0 year, 1 year, 2 year. I will illustrate for you. Part 3 is about the stock valuation. In the other class, you're going to have about 5 or 6 formulas. But in class, I'm going to narrow down to 2 formulas for you. Okay? So it's going to make it easier for you to learn. I just identify different scenarios and how can you use those 2 formulas plus another one in different scenarios. That is all. Okay, let's begin. Now, everything I teach you about rate of return before, just temporarily erase them all. Okay? Imagine you have $100, but you don't spend it right now, and you have the plan to spend it in 1 year later. The rate of the bank is about 5%. There are 2 options for you. The first option is that you keep holding this $100 and do nothing until maturity. You still have $100. The second option is that you put this money into the bank because now on you don't need it. And then after 1 year from now, the money value is 105. Which option do you choose and why? You're going to probably choose the second option, right? Yes. It is not like 20 years ago in which your grandmother time, which they want to keep all their money and all their gold at home and get no interest. No, this is modern time. Things change. Now you can see that in these 2 options, if you choose the first one, your money just keep the same, but inflation change. So that means that your money is going to be devalued. Now, for the second option, definitely most of people will choose this because when you put it in the bank, you get interest. Now, so you see these 2 options, definitely no one is going to choose the first one. That is, they're going to choose the second one. And this second one gives you some interest rate. And this interest rate is somehow called rate of return. Okay? Why is it called rate of return? Because this formula is just partially right. It's not completely right. You're going to get $105 over your investment is how much? Over 100. Okay. So in additional, in return, how many dollars you get extra for $100? 5. It is 5%. Okay. So 5% is the rate of return. Two, risk and return I just forgot. On the last week, Wednesday, any of you go to the little job? All right, you see all my announcement, right? All you see my announcement? You go to Final Door? To Final Door. Now, risk of return.
เดี๋ยว
So normally you all know that high risk means high return. And there is some certain things called some basic risk or free risk. That is called government bond. If you remember about bond, they give you some yield. Okay? This yield is considered the basic rate of return to the government. Because why? Because between the government and a corporation, which one can be default? Definitely the company, the corporation, right? The government is less likely to default. And in each country, the government bond is considered to be the risk-free rate. Now, the risk-free rate somehow depends on the level of your assets. You are individual. You cannot access into government bond. And the only thing that you can access is from deposit money at local bank. Okay? And the interest rate at the bank may be considered your risk-free rate. Okay? So therefore, understand about the risk-free rate relatively. That's all about risk return. And now the last thing is about the cash flow. Cash inflow is the cash flow into your pocket. Cash outflow is the cash outflow of your pocket. Okay, it is as simple as that. You're gonna need 1 and 2 to go directly to number 3. Option of difficulty. Again, you're going to have $100, but this time there is 3 options. The first option is that you're going to spend it right now. This is in year 0, in year 1, and in year 2. In the second option, you don't spend it now, but you're going to spend it in 1 year. So therefore, that is 100 will become 105, assuming that the rate of return in the bank is 1%. And option 3, you don't spend it now. You don't spend it in 1 year, but you're going to spend it in 2 years. So in year 1, what do you have? You have $5 interest, and then here in year 2 you're going to have 175. Is it okay? This is $5 interest and $5 interest plus principal 105. Okay? We're not talking about. We're not thinking back about the question that is in. Okay. Here. So basically, the thing is that these 3 options must be the same. Must give you the same value of money. So therefore, that the thing is this: if you sum all the money, how much do you have here? Here you have 100. Here you have 105, and here you have 110. The sum is different. So basically, on the accounting side, this one gives you the most money. But on financial term, these 3 options must give you the same money. Now, the thing is that you already learned about discount cash flow. And here you're going to see that this 100 is equal to 5 divided by 1 plus 5% plus 105 divided by 1 plus 5 power by 2. Okay? Now, what happens if I change this 100 to this? And so therefore, that you're going to have something from the net present value. Is it okay? Why there is a minus here? Now imagine the money at the beginning, you have 100 in your pocket. You take it out and deposit it into the bank, so the money is inflow, outflow, outflow. So therefore it is minus 100. After 1 year, you're gonna receive the money from the bank of $5 interest. So that is the money inflow. And then in the year second, you're gonna receive 105 from the bank. Interest and principal, that's gonna be the money inflow again. Okay, so therefore you can see that the plus side stands for the money inflow, and the negative stands for the money outflow. So when you sum that all, the value you have is equal to how much? Need to use a calculator. Okay, quick. It would equal to 0. Some simple explanation, I can explain that for you because option 1, option 1, yes, is equal to option 3. And option 3 is the time series, so therefore when you discount back, it's still equal to 100. Okay, see the point? Now, the net present value, when it is equal to 0, with this rate of return at 5%, this means that the rate of return is 5%. Now imagine that what happens if the rate of return is changed, but the cash flow is still the same. So what do the value you have be?
Negative.
Positive or negative?
Negative.
You're gonna have the negative. What is the cash flow you should be in order to make this equal to 0? 6. Now another scenario, we're going to consider that what happens if the value is 4. You're going to have the NPV is
Positive.
So one thing is this, that is when you use NPV, net present value. If your NPV is equal to 0, you know that that error is the rate of return required. Okay? For in this example, it is 5%. 5% is the rate of return required for this series of cash flow. And if your NPV is larger than 0, in the case that error equal 4%, your NPV is larger than 0. This means that your series of cash flow gives the rate of return more than 4%. And in the case of your with error equals 6%, your NPV is less than 0. That means that this series of cash flow does not meet your rate of return. Okay, this is a little bit complicated. I will go again slowly for you. Now, you have this series of cash flow. We begin that option 1 equal option 3. And option 3 gives you the rate of return of 5%. Okay? So therefore that when you discount this cash flow at rate of return of 5%, you're going to have the NPV equal to 0. So whenever your series of cash flow you discount back into present value and the NPV is equal to 0. That means this is the rate of return required for this series of cash flow. Okay? Now, if I have this series of cash flow, but I don't use the rate of return to be 5%, but now I use the rate of return to be 4%. So when I apply 4 into here, the net present value that I have will be larger than 0. So what does it mean when it's larger than 0? It means that the actual rate of return is already over 4%. How many of you still confusing about this? Just again, because I don't mind explain this over 10 times. You know, you need to understand it, okay? I need you to understand this clearly, because if you understand this clearly, on later chapter you will not confusing about what is the rate of return and you can move on very fast. But if you don't, you are figuring out between many types of the rate of return, you cannot go on. How many of you still do not understand this one? One only. Don't worry, two. Okay, three. If you want me to try to explain for you again. Now, did you all understand from between option 1 and option 3 that they are equal? Still can we understand that, right? So that means that option 1 and option 3 must be equal. Now, and this is the series of cash flow I have. Okay, I'm going to do this now. This is the series of cash flow I have. If I take option 3 in year 0, okay, minus 100, minus 100. Cash outflow is 100 in year 0. In year 1, then you're going to have the cash inflow of 5 divided by 1 plus. And then in the second year, you're going to have 105 divided by power by 2. Okay? Now, first, if a net rate of return is equal to 5%, that is the rate of return here. Okay? And then the net present value that you have here is equal to 0. So the first thing is that in a series of cash flow, if you discount them back to the net present value, and which value of error give you the net present equals 0, that means that is the rate of return of that cash flow. Okay? Or this is also called internal rate of return, but I will tell it later. I don't want you to be confused. Okay, just some additional information for this. Now, if I keep this cash flow which is there, but now I change the value of error down to 4%. So what happened to the series of cash flows I have here? I have it, NPV is positive. Now, hold this for a while. How much does the cash flow do I need to make this equal 0? This needs to be 4. This needs to be 4, and this needs to be 4. But instead, what is the cash flow that I have? 5. Okay? So that means I have more than expect. Okay? So you know that one thing is that if a series of cash flow, in this example, with the rate of return of 4%, and you have the NPV of over 0, less than 0, you know that this series of cash flow exceeds your demand on rate of return. Get the point? It exceeds your demand on rate of return. Because your rate of return is 4%, and the requirement gas flow is $4 here and $104 here only. But now you have 5, that is, you have an extra. This means that whenever, I repeat again, whenever you are given a rate of return, and you input that to calculate the net present value, and your net present value is positive. That means this series of cash flow is exceeds your rate of return. Get the point? How many people don't understand to this part? How many understand? Okay. Now, again, for the third point, if this time I use the rate of return is 6%, that is the rate of return I require. And this is the series of cash flow. 5, 105. This is 6%. This is 6%. Now this NPV is going to be minus, going to be negative or positive? Negative. Negative. What should be the gas flow here in order to make this NPV equal 0? 6. It should be 6, but it actually is going to give you 5. So that means that you are getting lesser or more than you require? Lesser than you require. So therefore, that whenever you calculate a net present value of a series of cash flow like this, and the result gives you the NPV is negative, that means that this series of cash flow does not meet your rate of return. Get the point? So therefore that the basic things about the rate of return here can be divided into 3 parts. The first part is that if your series of cash flow and you use find out a value of the rate of return that make your NPV is equal 0. That is the rate of return or internal rate of return for the series of cash flow. Now, if you are given, for example, for this project, you are given 4% of rate of return, and when you calculate the NPV, you get the value of NPV is positive. This means that this series of cash flow gives you more cash than you expect, more return than you expect. This is your expected return, and this is the series of cash flow. 5, okay, more than you expect. But if you have the rate of return of 6%, and then you put into this series of cash flow, and then your NPV is negative. This means that this series of cash flow is giving you less dollar than your requirement. So that means that you invest in this, you don't meet your rate of return requirement. Do you get this point? No. So this is the thing. Now, what is the general process here? I mean, you can read in the books, but I don't trust most of the books. Here's the thing. Actually, there are certain books that I write wrong, even in advanced book. The thing is that the first thing, you have to identify what is the risk. When you invest in something, the first thing is that you have to identify what is the risk. Low
Storage.
oh, sorry, okay, pause it. Có quen thì lấy ra được không? Có.
Cứ tế vào. Tế vào.
Hết rồi. 20
Okay. The first thing is that you have to identify your risk. Where is your risk? What is your risk? And once you identify the risk, the second thing you can identify is your rate of return. And when you identify the rate of return, the third thing you can identify is you calculate the net present value in order to decide if this project meets your requirement about return or not. Do you get the point? Because there is no way you can identify the rate of return and then you go backwards to identify the risk. That is possible in certain case in financial market, in which you are doing backward. But normally, here, when you invest in a project, the first thing is that people want to think about what are the risks in that project that I have to take. And in the first lecture, you already defined what is the risk, right? The risk is simply that to identify the risk.